Hello everyone, welcome back to The Budget Sportsman. Thank you so much for joining me on today's video. Today I want to give you a side-by-side comparison between two different camera arms designed for filming your hunts, whether that's self-filming or maybe even filming with a buddy. And I want to give you the information you need to make an informed buying decision, whether this is your first camera arm or whether you're looking for a change. The two camera arms we're going to look at today are the 4th Arrow stiff arm and the 4th Arrow satellite arm. And just a little background on my experience with these is the 4th Arrow stiff arm is the arm that I've been using now for probably at least 6 or 7 years since I started my YouTube channel back in 2018. I have changed the base. I've used a couple different bases, but the stiff arm itself is what I've been using all of these years, and overall been pretty happy. But as a mobile hunter, I'm always looking for ways to cut weight out of my pack and also bulk out of my pack, and this arm is a little bit bulky, particularly when it comes to the base. There's a lot of weight. This thing is chunky, and I just thought maybe it'd be a good chance to cut a little bit of weight out of my pack. And so I recently found a good deal on a used 4th Arrow satellite arm, and I thought that maybe I would pick it up. So speaking of buying this used, let me address the cost of these two arms just for a moment. If you go to 4th Arrow's website and buy them new, you're going to pay about $250 for the 4th Arrow stiff arm. That does not include a tripod head or a fluid head. And if I remember correctly, the 4th Arrow satellite arm is about $260. I think $249 and $259. So about $10 price difference, but the smaller and lighter option is actually the more expensive option here. Now, I will say that I bought both of these arms used. I can't remember now what I paid for the stiff arm, but I recently picked up the satellite arm for just $125 from somebody on Facebook. However, I waited a long time and was watching a long time to find that deal. These typically go for about $175 to $200 on the used market. So I already mentioned there's a big weight difference between these two camera arms, so let's talk about that for a moment. The advertised weight of the stiff arm is 4.5 pounds for the entire kit, while the advertised weight for the satellite arm here is 2.3 pounds. So you're talking about a 2.2 pound difference. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and put up here on screen my weights that I got on my scales for these two different arms. One thing to keep in mind about the advertised weight for the kits is that the stiff arm here comes with a ratchet strap to attach it to the tree. Now, the ratchet strap is heavy and it's loud, and so years ago I chose to ditch the ratchet strap, buy an over the center buckle strap, and use it that way. And it gets plenty tight in my experience. I don't have any issues. It's much smaller, much more compact, a lot lighter, and works just fine. The satellite arm, on the other hand, they picked up on what the DIY guys were doing, and they included a cam buckle strap, or excuse me, an over the center buckle strap with the 4th Arrow satellite arm. So my advertised weights are probably going to be a little different because I've already ditched some weight off of the stiff arm. Now, one of the other huge differences between these two arms is their rated weight capacity. While the stiff arm is heavier, it's called a stiff arm for a reason. It's robust, and it is rated to handle up to 10 pounds of weight. Now, this camera that I've currently got mounted on here weighs about 3 pounds with no microphones or attachments or accessories, and my current fluid head weighs almost another pound. So I think I'm at 3.9 pounds with this current setup. So I'm well under the 10-pound rated capacity, and to be honest, I don't think I'd really want to push that limit, but I've got plenty of room to spare. I could put some microphones on here, do other things, and I would be totally fine. Over here, the 4th Arrow satellite arm has a rated capacity of just 5 pounds, half of the weight of the stiff arm. So now that I'm at 4 pounds here, I'm getting much closer to the max capacity. So one thing you may want to do in trying to make your decision about which arm is right for you is weigh your setup, figure out how much it weighs. If you're over that 5 pounds, then absolutely I would suggest going with a stiff arm. If you're under the 5 pounds, but just under, you may want to really think about which way you want to go. And we'll talk more about their stability in just a moment. But if you're running a camera that only weighs a pound or two, something light, a little handy cam, you're filming on your phone, then I think by all means the satellite's probably going to be fine for you. All right, so I took the camera off of this arm because I want to now measure and point out something really, really obvious, and that is the length of the arm or the reach you're going to get with these different arms. On the stiff arm on the bottom here, if I measure from the tree to the screw where the fluid head would attach, I've got about 34.25 to 34.5. While up here on the satellite arm, I've got about 24.75. So I'm looking at about 9.5 to 10 inches of extra reach on the stiff arm. Now, as you're making your decision, a huge part of that is probably going to be what kind of filming do you do? If you hunt primarily from a saddle, then the satellite arm, as the name implies, may be the right choice for you, because as you're facing the tree, and I don't have a saddle with me today, but it's pretty obvious here, I think. As you're facing the tree, you've got this triple section arm here that really articulates well, and it's going to be super easy to guide that thing between you and the tree to wrap all the way around the tree no matter where you need to film. I can come around the backside if I needed to. I can come around this side. I can bring it around and get almost all the way back to where I'm filming at you. Of course, this is a small diameter tree, of course, but it's going to articulate super well. It's going to be super easy to get between you and the tree as you're in your saddle. Now, to be clear, I've used this stiff arm for the last number of years in a saddle and filmed okay, but you do have to be cautious about how you set it up, because it can be a little bit difficult when you're in a saddle to get this between you and the tree. There's only so much room right here, so you may have to push yourself back. One of the things I do is move my arm a little bit further around the side of the tree where I attach it to give myself a little bit more room. But I have filmed with this out of a saddle with really no problem for the last number of years. It's just more the bulk and the weight. But I do think there is a huge advantage to having this smaller arm that articulates in more places to sort of be able to navigate that between you and the tree. I think it's going to be a lot easier. Now, on the other hand, I'm going to come around the other side of the tree here. If you're a tree stand guy and you hunt maybe primarily from a hang-on or something like that, you may really want to consider what you're going to do here. So imagine me in a hang-on right here, and a deer's over here on my strong side, say with a bow. Well, it's going to be a little bit difficult to wrap this around and get it pointed there. I mean, it's wrapping around my body, and when I even move, it's moving the camera. It's going to be very difficult, and I'm backed up against the tree. If you were maybe standing out further out on the edge of your platform and had the seat between you and the tree, you can see it's going to be very difficult to wrap around in front of me. You're probably going to end up having to go behind you, but now you're going to be, doing this thing here. Probably not going to be that convenient. On the other hand, the stiff arm just has a lot more length to get out past you. You can turn your fluid head now, and you can film that way. So if you're a tree stand guy, I think that's going to be a big, big factor of which one you choose. There's a lot of mobile guys who use a tree stand, and you still want to be lightweight and compact. This arm is awesome, but you're just not going to get the reach to get out past you and around you. You're going to have to be probably more creative in the way that you set this up and the way you take your shots and film your shots. Now, if you are hunting with a buddy and you're not self-filming, then that might be all the difference in the world as well. All right, so the next thing that I wanted to address about these two arms is the rigidity or the bounce. One thing you can see here is I've already got my camera on the stiff arm, and you can probably see that it bounces. There's no question, but it recovers quickly. It is very stiff, it's very rigid. And we'll do this more in a moment with the camera on the satellite arm, but you can see, I don't know, hopefully it will show up on video, there's just a lot more bounce in this arm. It's not as robust. The arms are not as thick. The base is not as heavy and sturdy, and so there's just a lot more wobble and bounce in this arm. But what I want to do is do a quick test with my camera on here and see how quickly it recovers. And the first test that I want to do is this camera has what's known as in-camera image stabilization. And so what I want to do is I'm going to come over here and I'm actually going to turn that off, and that will give us a pretty good idea of what this is going to do. So I'm just going to move this around a little bit. There's a stump out there, it's about 30 yards, and I'm just going to move this around and just move it a little bit, tap focus, I'm tapping on it, and see how quickly it recovers. It seemed to do pretty good there. I'm just going to move it a little bit more violently and try to focus on the same spot again, tap it, and how quickly does it recover? Again, this is with absolutely no image stabilization. The lens does not have image stabilization, and the in-body stabilization is turned off. Let me tap the arm, see how that does. See how quickly it recovers. I tapped it several times without giving it time to recover. That seems pretty good. Now let me go ahead, I'm going to turn that recording off, and I'm going to go ahead just for a moment and turn the image stabilization back on and try to do some of the same tests. I'm just going to bounce it a little bit, focus out there on my stump, bounce it a little bit. Seems to be doing pretty good. One thing for you camera guys, I am at 85 millimeters on this lens, 85 millimeter prime lens, and obviously 85 millimeters is going to show more bounce than maybe a wide angle lens would do, but still this is a good focal length I think to do this test on. Overall it seems to recover very quickly. All right, so one thing I noticed is as soon as I put this 4-pound setup on the satellite arm, I actually had to re-level it. It kind of pulled down on the whole thing, and I was now out of level and it was angling down just a little bit just from adding the weight while it looked level before the camera was on there. So let's try some of the same tests here. We're going to turn the image stabilization off, and we're just going to move it around. And I think you can probably already see how much more that's bouncing. It is recovering. Let's move it over here. Let's say we're filming over here and there's a deer. We move it around and I tap on the focus. How quickly did that recover? I'm trying to be aggressive here. I'm not trying to baby it. Just moving it around as quickly as I can. All right, put it there. And you can really see the wobble there. And it recovers. It takes several seconds to recover. That's something you're going to need to be aware of. I'm going to tap the arm now like I did on the others, and you can really see the wobble. It definitely, at least on here, looks like it takes longer to recover. So now I've turned the image stabilization back on in the camera. Again, remember this is in body only. If you've got a camera that maybe has image stabilization in the lens and the body, you might get better results. But if you have a camera that does not have image stabilization, that's something to consider. So let's go ahead and try this again with the image stabilization. We're filming over here and we're gonna whip it back around quickly because the deer's coming in. I did notice myself kind of holding on to the handle of the fluid head here, trying to sort of get it to calm down before I let go. Let's tap it again. The wobble is still there, but I do feel like the image stabilization kind of kicks in a little bit faster than what the camera arm itself recovers from that bounce. Let's do it again. It's there, and it does seem like after a second that image stabilization kicks in and sort of evens out the footage. So that's going to be a big factor, I think, for you about which arm you choose, is how heavy your camera is, how good the image stabilization is, and how important it is for you to have really good, solid, and stable footage. Now, one other key difference between these two arms that I forgot to mention earlier in the video is the leveling system. So the leveling system on the stiff arm here, if I take the arm out for a moment, you can loosen this knob, and I just want to point out that this knob here is an aftermarket knob. It's very large and easy to grab. The original one that comes with the stiff arm is kind of small, and when your hands are cold and you're trying to really crank that thing down to make sure it's tight enough to support the weight, it's a little bit too small, and I would suggest finding an aftermarket knob to be able to replace that knob with. That's just something I wanted to point out. But you can loosen this knob and you can see that you've got a ton of range of motion. This thing will spin 360 degrees in this direction and then also have leveling in this direction as well. Why is that important? Well, if you ever wanted to maybe ground hunt and mount this on a fallen log on the ground, or if you're in a big old gnarly tree that has branches sticking out every which way, you could actually mount this base horizontally and still rotate this to where you're going to get a nice level camera arm. And so if that's something you do often, or if you have real gnarly trees with you'd like to maybe mount your arm on the branch rather than on the trunk of the tree, that may be something that you want to consider. Now, the satellite arm, on the other hand, does not have as much range of motion. You're not going to be able to mount this thing horizontally and still get a level camera arm. It's going to have to be mounted vertically on the trunk of the tree. I believe it's advertised as having 20 degrees range of motion. You can see I can angle it down as far as that, pretty significant, up as far as this. So there's a good bit of range of motion there. If you're a typical saddle hunter, tree stand guy, and most of the time you're just putting it on the trunk of the tree, there's enough range of motion there to allow you to make sure that you're going to get level even if the trunk is leaning just a little bit. But you're not going to be able to do the same kind of unique attachment points as you would be able to do with the 4th Arrow stiff arm. Well, I hope this video has helped you to make an informed buying decision. If you already own one of these camera arms, or maybe you're thinking about buying one, let me know down in the comments your thoughts between these two arms and which one you're choosing and why. If you enjoyed the video, I'd really appreciate it if you'd give it a thumbs up. And until next time, remember to get off YouTube and get outdoors into God's great creation.